Hey chillers, it's Tuesday again. I'm Amber, and this is another episode of True Crime and Chill. You'll notice I'm soloing here once again while Alex takes some much needed rest and momming time. Being a mother to 3 boys is no easy feat, but if anyone can handle it, it'll be her. In the meantime, I'll continue to work and bring you cases each week until she returns, which she hopes to do by October. This week, I pretty much stumbled across this case. I don't remember how or why, but it's sad and yet to be solved even nearly 10 years later. In 2012, the quiet small town of Evansdale, Iowa, became the site of a gut-wrenching double homicide. Evansdale is a town of fewer than 5,000 people. I know that nearby where I live, we have a town that size, and it's the kind of place where just about everyone knows just about everyone and what they're up to and their business. Elizabeth June Marie Collins was born at Allen Memorial Hospital in Waterloo, Iowa on July 31st of 2003. She was the daughter of Drew and Heather Cook Collins. She was a student at Poinier Elementary School and was a bubbly little person with the best smile who loved what life had to give and all it had to offer. Elizabeth enjoyed dressing up and getting her nails and hair done. She loved singing, riding her bike, playing softball and hockey, and she had a big heart and loved animals. Elizabeth also loved playing with her siblings and ordering them around. Lyric Ray Lynn Cook-Morrisey was born on October 2nd of 2001 in Waterloo to Dan and Misty Morrissey. She also had a brother, Dylan, who she was very close to. Her parents both suffered from drug addictions. And so, she was mostly raised by her grandmother. She attended Kingsley Elementary School and was 10 years old. Lyric was considered a very special young lady. She was an infectious joy to be around with a smile that radiated with love. She had a heart of compassion for her family and her friends. Lyric enjoyed bowling, cheerleading, and gymnastics. She also loved to be outside playing. Lyric's mother, Misty, and Elizabeth's mother, Heather, are sisters, and that made the girls cousins. Because Lyric spent a lot of time with her grandmother, it's not a big surprise that the cousins often played together. During the summer of 2012, while the girls were out of school, they spent a lot of time together at their grandmother Wilma's house playing cards and riding bikes. On July 13th of 2012, the girls were out for a summer bike ride, but they didn't return home. Multiple people saw the 2 girls out and about. The girls' grandmother said she saw the girls last riding their bikes near downtown Evansdale about 12:15 p.m. The girls were also seen at about 12:23 p.m. on Broven Boulevard in Evansdale, and then spotted between 12:30 and 1 p.m. on Gilbert Drive, about 1.5 miles from their grandmother's house and not far from Myers Lake, a popular fishing and recreation area. Those are the last known reports of the girls being seen alive. Later that afternoon, the girls hadn't returned, and the grandmother got worried. She began calling friends and family, and then they began looking around town in the places that the girls might have been. At 2:48 p.m., the police were notified. They began their search alongside hundreds of community volunteers. Their bikes and Elizabeth's purse were found on a trail on the southeast corner of Myers Lake about 4 p.m. on the same day that the girls went missing, but there were no clues as to their whereabouts. The purse was found about 25 feet away from the bikes, just on the other side of a fence, and it had Elizabeth's cell phone in it. However, the girls were nowhere to be found. Now, the phone was used for the girls to play games and was not activated to make calls. And I don't know how many of you know this, but I worked in cell phone sales for a couple of years, and I learned an important fact that even if a phone isn't activated, it can still call 911. I feel like this is important information that everyone should know. So, tell your loved ones. Now, because the bikes were found, but the girls were not, this sent up bigger red flags for law enforcement, and a big search campaign was created. Flyers were posted around town, divers from Underwater Search and Rescue were called in to search the lake, and officers paddled around the lake slowly in kayaks. After a few days of searching, the city partially drained the lake, but still, nothing was found. Members of the FBI's Child Abduction Rapid Deployment Department team were also called in. While a search of the lake itself was being conducted, other volunteer searchers from the community, as well as sniffer dogs, were searching the trails around the lake. As an added precaution, police even followed the garbage trucks as they picked up the city's garbage, just in case. The parents of Elizabeth often said in interviews that they were never unhappy with the level of response and search from law enforcement from the community. Now, I first wondered why an Amber Alert wasn't issued right away. But apparently, at the time, under the Amber Alert system, law enforcement needed specific details. For instance, a suspect description, a vehicle, or a license plate in order to activate the notification. Because authorities had nothing more than the descriptions of Lyric and Elizabeth, an Amber Alert wasn't issued when the cousins disappeared. Police did activate an automated system that called phones in the area where the girls were last seen in less than 2 hours of learning of the disappearance, according to a timeline provided by authorities. The police conducted hundreds of interviews and scanned security footage from throughout the town. There were confirmed sightings of the girls on a security camera behind an auction house where the girls can be seen not far from their grandmother's house. Tips also flooded in from locals who kept finding random items of clothing. However, none of them belonged to the girls, and the girls were still nowhere to be found. Next, police did the most logical thing and started to interview registered sex offenders and anyone who was recently put into jail or released from jail for crimes similar to an assault and a sexual assault of minors. A few of them were asked to take polygraph tests, and all the tests came back clear, causing none of the offenders to be considered suspects. The families were also questioned, along with electronics taken and searched. Everything came back clear in terms of evidence surrounding the disappearance of the girls. That being said, the parents of Lyric ended up suffering some side effects from the search in that their history as drug users were really brought to light. Now, I'm just going to say this. Meth is an awful drug, and its effects run in every vein of every city, everywhere across the U.S. I've seen what it does to not only the users, but the families of loved ones of those affected by it. It's not good, and I highly suggest not even trying it. Don't go down that road, but I know that's not a luxury that everyone can afford. So where I'm going with this is that apparently Lyric's father also had a history of making drugs in the house while the children were home. So when the girls went missing, Dan had a long rap sheet of crimes he was being charged for, including possession, creation, and selling of methamphetamines. A year after the disappearance of the girls, he was sentenced to 90 years in prison on the related drug charges. Does this make him a bad person? Well, it certainly doesn't make him a good person, but I don't believe he had anything to do with the girls' disappearance, at least not knowingly. Misty also spent some time incarcerated due to excessive drinking and drug use in 2014. The stress of things like losing a child will cause you to fall back into old habits, including bad ones. Both parents maintain to this day they had nothing to do with the disappearance of the two girls. Months started to pass with no new leads as to the whereabouts of the girls. Then, on Wednesday, December 5th of 2012, hunters came across two deceased bodies in the Seven Bridges Wildlife Park near Redland in Bremer County, a wildlife area about 25 miles from where the girls were last seen. They contacted law enforcement, officials said, at 12:45 p.m. On Thursday, December 6, 2012, Chief Deputy Rick Abbin with the Black Hawk County Sheriff's Office held a press conference to announce officials were confident that the bodies were those of Lyric and Elizabeth. Abbin said there were no other missing person cases and the remains found were of smaller stature. The bodies were transported to the State Medical Examiner's Office in Enki for positive identification. On Monday afternoon, December 10, 2012, the Iowa State Medical Examiner's Office confirmed the bodies found on Wednesday were those of Lyric Cook and Elizabeth Collins. To this day, there are no official details that have been released as to the official cause of death of the girls, though it has been said that the date that they died was the day that they went missing. Heather Collins, Elizabeth's mother, says she doesn't need to know what anyone did to her daughter, Elizabeth, because it's in God's hands. She says, quote, "I don't need to know how she was murdered. I don't need to know what anybody has done to her because that's in God's hands. All I know is that I don't have my daughter here anymore, and she is up in heaven with our Savior. That's all I need to know." She's also quoted as saying That guy is going to be the only one to know how they murdered my daughter and niece, so we asked investigators not to put out how the girls were killed. In the years since they went missing, authorities have interviewed more than 1,000 people and hundreds of sex offenders. It was also revealed in 2017 that 2 people had confessed to the crime, but authorities eliminated them after determining they didn't know any of the intimate details about the case, just the stuff that had already been put out. Still, many hold out hope that their killer will someday be brought to justice. 6 months after Lyric and Elizabeth were found, authorities announced on Monday, June 24, 2013, that they had 3 separate witnesses who said they saw a white, older model, full-size SUV-type vehicle, similar to a Chevy Suburban or Ford Bronco, parked on Arbutus Avenue on July 13th. The street meets up with the bike trail where the girls' bikes were found. Witnesses described the vehicle as a large and clunky white SUV and an old-style boxy Suburban. 2 witnesses said they'd seen the white SUV parked between the 2 bike trail signs. According to KWWL Channel 7, the other witness told police that they saw the vehicle parked near the woods on the east side of the lake, only a few hundred feet from where the bikes were found. All 3 witnesses said they'd seen the SUV sometime between 11:30 a.m. and 12:30 p.m. on July 13th of 2012, the same day and approximate time period when the girls went missing. Though 2 of the witnesses came forward with the information while canvassing, the third came several months later because the person assumed someone had already told police about it. Mike Rakowski with the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation was quoted as saying, "The one that kind of got the ball rolling was actually several months later. They didn't know if it would be important, and that's kind of what we want to stress to the public, is any piece of information can be important." State investigators conducted a careful analysis of potential similarities between a similar case that happened in Dayton in May of 2013. The kidnapping and murder of teenager Kathleen Shepard. In June 2013, a state official announced that potential connections were already being analyzed between Shepard's murder and the Cook and Collins slayings. Kathleen Shepard, who was 15, and another girl were kidnapped from Dayton on May 20th while walking home after school. Authorities say Michael James Clunder, who was 42 and a registered sex offender from Stratford, Iowa, took the girls to a hog confinement lot where he worked, where he zip-tied their hands. The other girl managed to escape when Michael took Kathleen to another part of the property, police say. When police arrived, they found Michael dead in his truck after taking his own life, but Kathleen was nowhere to be found. Fishermen found Kathleen's body Friday night, June 7th of 2013, in the Des Moines River, about 15 to 20 miles downriver from where it runs along Dayton's east side. According to a USA Today story, Gerard Myers, Assistant Director of Field Operations of the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation, said authorities were taking a 2-pronged approach to any comparisons: laboratory analysis of forensic evidence and investigative work that could pinpoint, among other things, where Clunder may have been when other people went missing, including Elizabeth and Lyric. Michael served about 2 decades in prison from 1992 to 2011 for previous kidnapping and assault charges. But on May 14th of 2014, DCI Specialist Agent Mike Rakowski with the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation said the DCI is pretty confident Michael Clunder isn't a person of interest in Elizabeth and Lyric's case. During a press conference in August of 2014, police said they believe Lyric and Elizabeth's killer was likely someone local and familiar with both Myers Lake in Evansdale and Seven Bridges Wildlife Area in Bremer County, because the area where the girls were found was very secluded and not a lot of people knew about it. In a press conference held at the Evansdale City Hall on Tuesday, February 3rd of 2015, Evansdale Chief of Police Kent Smock said, "I think you will all agree with me that Seven Bridges is extremely remote. We have no doubt that the person or persons responsible for this crime are very familiar with Seven Bridges." For the record, Smock was fired from his position as Evansdale Chief of Police on Tuesday, April 14th of 2015. According to the documents, 7 officers signed a complaint in late February about Smock's behavior, saying he lacked, quote, honesty, integrity, and respect for police employees of the city of Evansdale. A report by the Waterloo Cedar Falls Courier at the time says the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit, which develops profiles of suspects, released details from an FBI study and unveiled those conclusions. The offender profile concluded, in part, that They believe it was only one offender, not more than one. The offender is familiar with both Myers Lake in Evansdale and Seven Bridges Wildlife Area in Bremer County. The suspect chose Seven Bridges because he or she was familiar with the area and knew it was secluded. The offender blends in with and may be part of the Evansdale, Bremer, and surrounding communities. The suspect likely used quiet coercion to gain the girls' compliance into leaving Myers Lake, using a ruse or threats of violence, and that other possible characteristics include that the suspect may have been experiencing stress related to legal troubles, spousal problems, employment difficulties, financial strain, or mental health issues in July of 2012. The suspect may avoid discussing the case, or, on the other side, they might show an extreme interest in the matter, but they're likely following developments in the media. The offender may have attempted to abduct children or adults in the past. And following the disappearance, the suspect may have altered his or her physical appearance, such as changing hairstyle and facial hair. The offender's vehicle may have also been altered with a new paint job or reupholstery. In July of 2017, a 58-year-old man named Jeff Altmeier was arrested when he tried to lure away two elementary school girls on their way home from school. Between May 31st of 2016 and November 16th of 2016, Altmeier is suspected of trying to entice at least 19 children. He sexually abused two of them, police say. His victims were all girls with an average age of 10, but he went after kids as young as 6 and as old as 13. He was sentenced to life in prison for these crimes. So far, there's no evidence actually linking him to the crimes against Lyric and Elizabeth, but it has been investigated and he is still considered a person of interest in the case. In May of 2018, 36-year-old Teresa Grillman waited near the railroad tracks for the Union Pacific Railroad train to approach 9th Avenue when she, for reasons unknown to law enforcement, stood in front of the train and pulled her son in its path with her. A video showed Teresa and her son crossing the tracks that morning, detectives said. As the westbound train drew near, Teresa returned to the center of the tracks and, at the last moment, she pulled her son onto its path, killing them both. The two were pronounced dead at the scene, but the catch is that Teresa's community support specialists say she had a 6-page letter in a box in her house written by the men who had supposedly killed Elizabeth and Lyric, and Teresa said she used to hang out with those men, and they had confessed to her. When police searched her house, they did find a 6-page letter in a box, but it didn't contain any new information. There is also speculation that the February 2017 Delphi murders are connected to the deaths of Elizabeth Collins and Lyric Cook-Morrisey. There were some similarities in the two murders, but police have since ruled out any connection between the cases. Every July, loved ones hold an annual memorial ride and drive to raise awareness not only for Lyric and Elizabeth, but for other unsolved cases. On February 6th of 2013, officials announced that the trail and the park at Myers Lake would be renamed to honor the memory of Lyric and Elizabeth. The trail that runs around the lake is now known as the Trail of Angels, and the park sitting next to the lake is known as Angels Park. Cedar Valley Crime Stoppers is offering a $50,000 reward for anyone who has information leading to the arrest of the person or persons responsible for their disappearance. An additional $150,000 reward, raised privately and by the FBI, is available for information leading to an arrest and conviction in the case. Now, almost 10 years later, someone has yet to pay for this horrendous crime. Someone, somewhere, has the answer, but maybe they just don't know it yet. Evansdale Police Chief Jeff Jensen said, "I don't want people to go, oh, they'll think I'm crazy, and not call in." At this time, no arrests have been made in connection to their deaths. Anyone with information is asked to call the Evansdale Police Department at 319-232-6682 or the Cedar Valley Crime Stoppers at 855-300-8477.
Thank you for listening to True Crime and Chill. For more information, including case notes, photos, and sources, please visit our website at truecrimeandchill.com. You can also stay connected with us on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Look for new episodes from us each week on Tuesday.